The chamber was vast, carved from a single piece of crystalline stone that pulsed with soft blue light. 12 thrones arranged in a circle held the representatives of the most powerful species in the known galaxy. At the center stood Minji Kim, her hands clasped behind her back, her face calm despite the anger burning in her chest. The Archon Prime of the Velkith Empire raised one of his 4 arms. His skin shimmered like mercury, and his eyes glowed with cold authority. "The matter is settled," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Humanity has proven itself unworthy of civilized space. Their ambition knows no bounds. Their wars consume resources. Their expansion threatens stability. We vote now." Minji stepped forward. "We have followed every rule you set for us. We have paid every tax, honored every treaty, and contributed to the defense of Council space. What crime have we committed that deserves exile?" A delegate from the Thorian Collective, a being made entirely of living vines wrapped around an ancient skeleton, spoke in a rustling whisper. "You grow too fast. You ask too many questions. You do not accept your place." "Our place?" Minji's voice rose despite her training. "You mean beneath you. You mean silent and obedient." The Archon Prime's expression did not change. "Precisely. The galaxy functions through order. Humanity disrupts that order. We vote. One by one, the delegates raise their hands or appendages or energy fields. 11 votes for exile. Only the small, bird-like delegate from the Chur Harmony abstained, her feathers ruffling with what might have been shame. The decision was final. Minji closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, she looked directly at the Archon Prime. "You will regret this," she said quietly. "Not because we will seek revenge, but because you are throwing away the best allies you could ever have had." The Archon Prime waved a dismissive hand. "You have 30 solar cycles to remove all human presence from Council territory. Any who remain after that deadline will be eliminated. This session is concluded." The holographic projection of Minji flickered and vanished. She was back on the human embassy station, standing alone in the communication chamber. Her hands were shaking. She had failed. Billions of people were about to lose everything that far from the council chambers. Captain Hyan Park stood on the observation deck of his cargo vessel, the Horizon's Edge, watching as construction drones dismantled Earth's largest orbital station. Piece by piece, the structure that had taken 50 years to build was being torn apart. The drones worked with mechanical efficiency, cutting through metal and composites, loading everything onto transport ships. Hyan's first officer, a young woman named Ji-won, stood beside him. "Where will they all go?" she asked. "The Outer Rim," Hyan said. "Beyond Council space. The frontier worlds. Places the Council doesn't care about because there's nothing there worth taking." "There's nothing there to sustain us either," Ji-won said. Hyan nodded. "I know." Below them, evacuation ships filled with families, personal belongings crammed into whatever space remained after essential supplies. Children pressed their faces against viewports, watching their homes disappear. Adults sat in silence, too shocked or too angry to speak. Some wept. Some stared at nothing. The exodus had begun. On the colony world of New Seoul, engineer Taeyeon Choi helped his wife pack their belongings in the transport crates. Their 2 children played in the corner of the room, too young to understand that they would never see this house again. Taeyeon had built this house himself, using local stone and imported timber. He had installed the heating system, the water recyclers, the garden that grew vegetables in the mineral-poor soil. 5 years of work, reduced to memories. How long will it take to get there? His wife asked, folding clothes with mechanical precision. 4 months in cryosleep, Taeyeon said. Maybe 5, depending on the routes we can use. The council is restricting our access to the primary jump gates. And when we arrive? Tyan looked at his children. We start over. The transport ships formed convoys, thousands of vessels moving together through the darkness of space. They traveled through systems humanity had once claimed as home, past stations now sealed and empty, past mining facilities abandoned in haste. Council patrol ships watched from a distance, ensuring the humans kept moving, offering no assistance when ships broke down or ran low on fuel. Some ships didn't make it. Engine failures, navigation errors, or simple bad luck claimed them. The convoy kept moving. There was nowhere else to go. Tyan's family arrived at it, Glacier's End 6 months after leaving New Seoul. The cryosleep had preserved them, but stepping onto the icy surface felt like waking into a nightmare. The settlement was a collection of prefabricated shelters arranged in rough circles, their heating units struggling against the constant wind. The sky was a pale gray, and the horizon stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by jagged ice formations that thousands of humans had already arrived, with thousands more coming each day. There was no infrastructure, no government, no plan. People huddled in shelters, rationing food that wouldn't last a month. Fights broke out over supplies. Some gave in to despair. Tyan refused to give up. He organized a group of engineers and construction workers, and together they began building. They salvaged materials from damaged ships, jury-rigged heating systems, and dug into the ice to create insulated storage. It was brutal work in the freezing cold, but it gave people purpose. On other worlds, similar stories unfolded. On the desert planet of Red Sands, humans built underground cities to escape the heat. On the ocean world of Deepwater, they constructed floating platforms. On the asteroid cluster called the Fragments, they hollowed out rocks and created artificial gravity. Everywhere, humanity adapted, but they were not alone in the Outer Rim. Other species lived here too, species the Council had ignored or discarded. The Krill, insectoid miners who worked the asteroid belts, viewed the arriving humans with suspicion. The Scare, massive reptilian warriors exiled for their refusal to submit to Council authority, watched from their fortress worlds. The Luminae, beings of pure energy who could not survive in Council space, observed with curiosity. None of them offered help. In the Outer Rim, every species looked after itself. Resources were scarce, and trust was a luxury no one could afford. Minji Kim arrived on Unity Point, a converted asteroid station that served as humanity's temporary capital. She walked through corridors filled with refugees, past medical bays overwhelmed with sick and injured, past storage rooms nearly empty of food. The smell of too many people in too little space was overwhelming. She found Hyam Park in what passed for the command center, a room filled with salvaged equipment and jury-rigged computers. He looked exhausted, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "We have enough food for 3 more weeks," he said without greeting. "Water recycling is failing on 7 stations. We've lost contact with 2 convoy groups, and there are reports of pirates attacking stragglers." Minji sat down heavily. "The Council wanted us to die out here, quietly, where no one would see." Hyam looked at her. "Are we going to?" Minji was quiet for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "No, we're not. Humans don't die quietly. We adapt. We survive. And somehow, we're going to turn this into something the Council never expected." Hyam almost smiled. "Any ideas how?" "Not yet," Minji admitted. "But we'll figure it out. We always do." Outside the station, more ships arrived every day, carrying more refugees, more hope, more desperation. The Outer Rim was harsh and unforgiving, but humanity had survived worse. And deep in the cold darkness of exile, something new was beginning to grow. Somin Lee had been a diplomat for 15 years before the exile. She had negotiated trade agreements, resolved disputes, and represented humanity at countless council functions. Now she stood in the cargo bay of a broken shuttle on an asteroid, watching a group of krill workers repair the damage her emergency landing had caused. The krill were like nothing she had seen before. Each stood about as tall as her waist, with 6 legs, 4 arms, and a chitinous shell that gleamed in the harsh work lights. They communicated through clicks and whistles, their mandibles moving in patterns she couldn't interpret. They worked with perfect coordination, passing tools and materials without speaking, their movements efficient and practiced. The largest krill approached her. Its shell was darker than the others, marked with scars. "You are the human," it said through a translation device strapped to its thorax. The voice was mechanical and flat. "You crashed on our mining claim. You owe compensation." Someone had nothing to offer. Her shuttle carried emergency supplies and personal effects. Nothing of value to a mining operation. But she had spent her career finding common ground, and she wasn't about to stop now. "I am Somin Lee," she said. "I crashed here by accident. My navigation system failed. I apologize for the damage." She paused, watching the krill work. "Your efficiency is remarkable. How long have you been mining this asteroid?" The krill's antennae twitched, which she learned later was equivalent to a shrug. 17 cycles. We extract iridium and platinum. We sell to traders who come through once every 3 cycles. The prices are never fair, but we have no choice." Somin thought quickly. What if humans could help you? We have engineers who could improve your extraction equipment. We could help you refine the ore here instead of selling it raw. You would get better prices. The krill was silent for a long time. Why would you help us? No one helps anyone in the Outer Rim. Everyone takes. Because we're new here, Somin said honestly. We need allies. We need friends. And we believe that helping each other makes everyone stronger. The krill made a sound like grinding rocks. It might have been laughter. Idealism. It will get you killed. But 3 days later, Tai and Choi arrived with a team of engineers. They studied the krill mining operation, asked questions, and took measurements. Within a week, they had redesigned the krill's extraction drills, increasing efficiency by 40%. They built a small refinery using salvaged human technology and krill materials. The krill watched with what might have been skepticism or might have been hope. When the next trader arrived, the krill offered refined metals instead of raw ore. The price jumped by 300%. The trader was angry but paid. The krill elder, whose name translated roughly as Stone Who Endures, met with Somin again. You kept your word, Stone Who Endures said. This is unusual. We need each other to survive, Somin said. The council threw us all away. Maybe we can build something better together. Word spread through the asteroid belts. Other krill colonies reached out to the humans, cautiously at first, then with growing interest. Trade agreements were signed. Human engineers worked alongside krill miners. Technology was shared. Trust began to grow. Meanwhile, Captain Hyam Park was exploring the ruins of an abandoned Velkith military station orbiting a gas giant. The station had been decommissioned decades ago, left adrift as a reminder of some long-forgotten conflict. It was massive, built to house thousands, with docking bays that could accommodate capital ships. Hyam brought his ship alongside and led a boarding party into the dark corridors. Their lights cut through the darkness, revealing walls covered in alien script and equipment corroded by time. In the command center, they found someone already there. Daeho Shin looked up from a holographic display, his face illuminated by the blue glow. He was thin and wiry, his clothes patched and worn, his eyes sharp with intelligence. Took you long enough, he said. I've been mapping this station for 3 weeks. The power core is still functional. Artificial gravity works in about 60% of the sections. And the docking systems just need some repairs. Hyan raised an eyebrow. Who are you? Salvage expert. Or I was before the exile. Now I'm just a guy trying to survive. Daeho gestured at the displays. This station could be useful. Really useful. It's positioned perfectly at the intersection of 3 major asteroid fields. If we could get it operational, it could serve as a trading hub. Hyan looked around the command center, his mind racing. A neutral meeting place. Somewhere all the outer rim species could come to trade safely. Exactly, Daeho said. But it's a lot of work. And we'd need support from the other species. They'd need to trust that we're not trying to control them. Hyan smiled. Let me introduce you to some people. 6 months later, Unity Point opened for business. The station's docking bays welcomed ships from dozens of species. Humans had repaired the critical systems, but they shared control with representatives from the Krill, the Scare, and others. No one species dominated. All were equal partners. Markets sprang up in the old barracks halls. Krill metals were traded for human technology. Scare bioarmor was exchanged for Luminae energy cells. Information flowed as freely as goods. Species that had never spoken to each other before found common ground in commerce and necessity. On the science levels, Yuna Kang worked day and night on her most ambitious project. She was a brilliant physicist who had been researching faster-than-light communication before the exile. The Council controlled all the communication networks in civilized space, charging exorbitant fees and monitoring all transmissions. The Outer Rim had no such network. Yuna worked with 3 Luminae researchers, beings of pure energy who existed in specially shielded containment fields. They thought differently than humans, processed information in ways that seemed almost magical. Together, they developed a new type of quantum relay that didn't rely on Council infrastructure. The first test was simple. Yuna sent a message from Unity Point to Glacier's End, a distance that would normally require weeks to traverse via physical courier. The message arrived instantly. The second test connected 5 human colonies simultaneously. The third test invited Krill and Scare stations to join the network. Within a year, 40 locations across the Outer Rim were connected. For the first time, the scattered refugees could coordinate their efforts, share resources, and plan for the future. The network was fragile and required constant maintenance, but it worked. And it belonged to everyone, not controlled by any single power. On the mining world of Redstone, Medical Officer Junho Han opened the first multi-species hospital. He had been a trauma surgeon on Earth, experienced in treating injuries from industrial accidents and medical emergencies. Now he faced entirely new challenges. A Krill worker arrived with a cracked shell, the result of a cave-in. Junho had no idea how Krill physiology worked. He consulted with Krill healers, learned about their internal structure, and improvised a procedure using human surgical tools and Krill bioresin. The workers survived. A Scare warrior came in with radiation poisoning, his scales turning gray and brittle. Junho worked with Luminae energy specialists to develop a treatment that stabilized the warrior's cellular structure. The Scare recovered and spread word among his people that the human doctor could be trusted. More patients came. Injured miners, sick children, warriors wounded in skirmishes with pirates. Junho treated them all without asking about their species or ability to pay. He trained other humans in xenobiology, and he learned from alien healers who understood their own species better than any human ever could. The hospital became a symbol of something important. It showed that cooperation was possible, that different species could work together not just for profit, but for genuine mutual benefit. When a Krill child and a human child played together in the hospital waiting area while their parents received treatment, it seemed like a small thing. But small things could grow into something larger. Somin Lee visited Unity Point and saw what had been built. Markets filled with beings from a dozen different species. Engineers from 3 different civilizations working together to repair a damaged ship. A krill teaching a human child about mineral identification. A human showing a scare how to use a fabricator. She found Hyan Park in the command center, reviewing trade manifests. "It's working," she said, almost unable to believe it. "We're actually building something here." Hyan nodded. "The council wanted us to disappear. Instead, we're bringing everyone together." "It's fragile," Somin warned. "Trust is fragile. One incident, one betrayal, and this all falls apart." "Then we don't betray that trust," Hyan said simply. "We keep our promises. We help when we say we'll help. We prove that this new way is better than the old way." Outside Unity Point, a small fleet of ships arrived. Not refugees this time, but representatives. The krill sent ambassadors. The scare sent observers. Even the mysterious Lumine sent representatives to see this strange phenomenon of cooperation. They came with skepticism, but they came. And deep in the council chambers, light years away, intelligence reports began to arrive. Reports of unusual activity in the outer rim. Reports of species working together. Reports of humans building something unexpected in the darkness of exile. The Archon Prime read these reports and felt the first stirrings of concern. The meeting chamber on Unity Point had once been a Volkith military briefing room. Now it held representatives from 15 different species, seated around a circular table that Tai and Choi had built from salvaged materials. The air recyclers struggled to accommodate so many different atmospheric requirements, creating odd pockets of temperature and humidity throughout the room. Minji Kim stood at the center, her hands resting on the table's surface. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, traveling between worlds, meeting with leaders, listening to concerns and hopes. Now came the hard part, convincing everyone to formalize what they had been building. "We have proven that cooperation works," she began. "Over the past year, we have increased resource production by 400%. We have established trade routes that benefit all of us. We have shared technology and knowledge. We have defended each other against pirates and raiders. But we are still vulnerable. We are still scattered. We need something stronger." Stone Who Endures, the krill elder, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "You propose a government. Governments always favor some over others. The strong dominate the weak. This is the way of the galaxy." "It doesn't have to be," Minji said. "What if we built something different? A coalition where every species has an equal voice, where decisions are made together, where no one can be exiled or discarded." A scare war chief named Raktha rose from his seat. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, his scales dark green and scarred from countless battles. His eyes glowed amber in the dim light. "Pretty words," he rumbled, his voice like grinding stones. "But words are wind. How do we know humans won't betray us once you grow strong enough? How do we know this coalition won't become another council?" The room fell silent. This was the question everyone had been thinking, but few had dared to speak aloud. Trust was still fragile, still new. Minji met Rakthar's gaze directly. "You don't know. You can't know. Trust cannot be guaranteed. It can only be earned through action. We have worked beside you for a year. We have kept every promise we made. We have shared our technology freely. We have asked for nothing except the chance to survive together. But if you need more proof, then tell me what proof you require." Rakther studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Among the scare, we prove trust through combat. Face me in the proving circle, human diplomat. Show me your strength and your honor." Minji's heart sank. She was a diplomat, not a warrior. Raktha could kill her with one blow. But she understood what he was asking. This wasn't about winning. It was about courage. I accept, she said quietly. Captain Hyan Park stepped forward. No, I accept in her place. The challenge was issued to humanity, not to Minji specifically. I will face you, Raktha. The Scare War Chief's eyes gleamed with interest. You are a ship captain, not a warrior. I'm human, Hyan said. We don't back down from challenges. But I propose a modification to your terms. Not single combat. A team battle. Your warriors and mine working together against a common threat. We prove trust through cooperation, not domination. Raktha was quiet, considering. Then he nodded slowly. Interesting, unusual, but acceptable. What common threat do you propose? Daeho Shin spoke up from his position at a terminal. The lower levels of Unity Point are still infested with automated defense systems from when the Velkith abandoned this place. We haven't been able to shut them down completely. They're programmed to attack any organic life. We've lost 3 people down there. If you and your warriors can help us clear those levels, you'll prove your strength, and we'll prove we can fight beside you. Rakthar's smile widened. Now this is a worthy test. 2 days later, Hyan Park descended into the lower levels of Unity Point alongside Rakther and 5 Scare Warriors. The corridors here were dark and cold, untouched by the repairs happening above. Their lights revealed walls covered in frost and floors littered with debris. Somewhere in the darkness, machines waited. The first defense drone struck without warning, emerging from a side passage and firing energy bolts that scorched the walls. Hyan dove for cover while the Scare Warriors charged forward, their armored scales absorbing the impacts. They moved with terrifying speed, their claws ripping into the drone's housing. But more drones were coming. Hyan could hear them moving through the walls, their servos whining. He activated his comm. Daeho, we need a map of the defense grid. Sending it now. Daeho's voice crackled through the static. The main control node is 3 levels down. If you can reach it, you can shut everything down. Rakther looked at Hyan. Your people are fragile. How will you reach the control node? Hyan pulled out a small device from his pack. With human ingenuity, this is an electromagnetic pulse generator. Short range, but it'll disable any drones within 10 meters for about 30 seconds. Your warriors are strong and fast, but they can't hack Velkith systems. We need both our strengths to win. Understanding dawned in Rakthar's eyes. We fight together. We fight together, Hyan confirmed. They advanced through the levels in coordinated strikes. Scare Warriors drew fire while Hyan and his team disabled drones with EMP bursts and hacking tools. When a massive security construct blocked their path, too large for the Scare to damage with claws alone, Hyan planted explosives at its joints while the warriors kept it distracted. The explosion brought it down, and they moved forward. 3 hours later, covered in frost and exhausted, they reached the control node. Hyan's fingers flew over the ancient Velkith interface, bypassing security protocols and shutting down the defense network. The lights in the corridor changed from red to green. Silence fell. Rakther placed a massive hand on Hyan's shoulder, careful not to crush bone. You are small and weak, but you are clever and brave. This is a good combination. The Scare will stand with humanity and this coalition. Back in the meeting chamber, Rakther announced his people's support. One by one, other species followed. The Krill pledged their industrial might. The Luminae offered their energy technology. Smaller species who had been watching from the sidelines stepped forward, tired of being ignored and discarded by the greater powers. The coalition charter was drafted over the next month. Every species contributed to its writing. The principles were simple: mutual defense, shared resources, equal representation, and the promise that no member would be abandoned or exiled. Technology and knowledge would be shared freely. Trade would be fair. Disputes would be resolved through discussion, not violence. Tyon Choi led the effort to connect the coalition worlds with real infrastructure. Using a combination of human engineering, krill mining expertise, and scare labor, they built supply routes through the asteroid fields. Communication relays were placed at strategic points, extending Yuna Kang's network to dozens of new locations. Defensive platforms were constructed at key choke points, crewed by mixed species teams. The work was enormous. There were setbacks and failures. A supply convoy was lost to a navigational error. A communication relay malfunctioned, cutting off 3 worlds for a week. A dispute between krill and scare miners over resource rights nearly escalated into violence. But each time, the coalition found solutions. They learned from mistakes. They adapted. Yuna Kang's research team made a breakthrough that changed everything. By combining human quantum physics with Luminae energy manipulation and krill crystalline matrices, they developed hybrid fusion reactors that were 3 times more efficient than anything the Council possessed. The first reactor was installed on Unity Point, providing enough power for the entire station and all docked ships. More followed. Every coalition world received a reactor. Energy scarcity, the constant limiting factor in the Outer Rim, began to disappear. With abundant power, ice worlds could be properly terraformed. Desert worlds could run massive water recyclers. Manufacturing centers could operate at full capacity. JUNHO Han's hospital network expanded to 20 worlds. He trained doctors from every coalition species, creating the galaxy's first true multi-species medical system. A krill healer who learned human surgical techniques saved a scare warrior's life using a procedure she had never seen before. A human doctor cured a Luminae energy fluctuation disorder using principles taught by Luminae researchers. Trade flourished. The markets on Unity Point operated around the clock, dealing in goods from across the coalition. Krill metals, human-manufactured goods, scare biomaterials, and Luminae energy cells changed hands freely. Merchants grew wealthy. Worlds that had been struggling now prospered, and people began to arrive from Council space. At first, just a few refugees who had heard rumors of the coalition. Then more. They came in small ships, fleeing poverty or persecution, or simply seeking better lives. The coalition welcomed them, regardless of species. Council citizens who had lived their entire lives under rigid hierarchies discovered what freedom felt like. The signing ceremony for the coalition charter was held on Unity Point. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the renovated assembly hall. Minji Kim read the charter aloud, her voice carrying through translation systems to ensure everyone understood every word. Then, one by one, the representatives signed or marked or imprinted their agreement. Captain Hyan Park was named Supreme Coordinator of Coalition Defense Forces. Tyon Choi became Director of Infrastructure. Yuna Kang led the Science Directorate. Junho Han headed Medical Services. The council chamber was no longer peaceful. Raised voices echoed off the crystalline walls as delegates argued over reports from the Outer Rim. The Archon Prime sat on his throne, his forearms gripping the armrests with barely controlled fury. Impossible, declared the Thorian Collective's delegate, their vine body writhing with agitation. The reports must be exaggerated. Humans cannot have built a functioning coalition in such a short time. The Outer Rim species are too fractured, too competitive. A holographic display floated in the center of the chamber, showing images captured by Council spy drones. Unity Point gleamed in the darkness, its docking bays filled with ships from dozens of species. Trade manifests scrolled past, showing resource flows that bypassed Council markets entirely. Population statistics revealed refugees fleeing Council space for the coalition. The delegate from the Chur Harmony, the bird-like being who had abstained from the exile vote, spoke softly. Perhaps we made an error. Perhaps exile was too harsh. The Archon Prime's eyes blazed. Weakness. You suggest weakness. We exiled humanity to preserve order. Now they build disorder on our borders, corrupting other species with their dangerous ideas of equality and cooperation. This cancer must be cut out before it spreads further. Cut out? The Chur delegate's feathers ruffled. You speak of war against refugees. Against exiles who have harmed no one. They harm us by existing, the Archon Prime said coldly. Every refugee who flees to their coalition is a loss of resources and labor. Every trade route they establish weakens our economic dominance. They must be reminded of their place. They must be scattered before they become a true threat. The vote was called. This time, no one abstained. The council voted unanimously for military action. A fleet would be dispatched to dismantle Unity Point and scatter the coalition. The official justification was maintaining galactic stability. The real reason was fear. Admiral Krelnoth of the Velkith Imperial Fleet received his orders with satisfaction. He was a career officer who had spent 40 years enforcing council authority. The idea that exiled species had built something without council permission offended him deeply. He assembled a fleet of 60 warships, more than enough to overwhelm any defenses the refugees might have scraped together. The fleet departed council space with great ceremony. News broadcasts showed the ships in formation, their hulls gleaming with fresh paint. Analysts predicted a quick victory. Some council citizens protested, arguing that military action against refugees was morally wrong. Their objections were noted and ignored. On Unity Point, long-range sensors detected the approaching fleet 3 weeks before it would arrive. Emergency meetings were called. The coalition had defensive platforms and a small fleet of converted civilian ships, but nothing that could stand against a council military force. Minji Kim sat in the command center with her senior staff. The holographic display showed the approaching fleet, each ship marked with threat assessments. The numbers were not encouraging. We could evacuate, suggested one advisor. Scatter to different systems. Make it too difficult for them to find us all. And abandon everything we've built? Rakthar's voice was a growl. The scare do not run from threats. Neither do humans, Ironpark said. But we need to be smart about this. We're outgunned and outnumbered. If we fight them head-on, we lose. Daiho Shin was already working at a terminal, his fingers flying over the controls. I have an idea. I've been studying the Velkith Station's old records. I know how their ships are built, how their systems work. They have weaknesses. Yuna Kang joined him, examining the data. Their energy distribution systems are centralized. If we can overload their primary conduits, we can disable whole ships without destroying them. But we'd need to get close. Very close. We have mining drones, said Stone, who endures. Thousands of them. The Krill use them in asteroid fields. They are small, hard to detect, and can attach to ship hulls. Tyan Choi nodded, seeing the plan come together. We modify the drones with electromagnetic pulse generators. Send them in swarms. Attach them to council ships and disable their systems. It might work. It's a risk, Minji said. A huge risk. But it's better than surrender. She activated the communication network, broadcasting to all coalition worlds. The council is coming to destroy what we've built. They want to scatter us, to break us apart, to prove that exile means death. We have 3 weeks to prepare. This will be the hardest fight we've ever faced. But we fight together or we die separately. Send whatever ships you can spare. Send whatever weapons you have. And pray that our plan works. The response was immediate. Ships began arriving at Unity Point from across the coalition. Krill mining vessels retrofitted with weapon systems. scare warships that had been mothballed for decades, human cruisers built from salvaged parts. Even the Luminae sent energy beings contained in specialized fighter craft. It wasn't much, but it was everything the Coalition had. Meanwhile, Summon Lee worked on a different approach. She prepared a message for the Council fleet, a plea for peace broadcast on all frequencies. She gathered recordings from across the Coalition, krill workers and human engineers building together, scare warriors training alongside human soldiers, Junho Han's hospital treating patients of every species, children of different worlds playing in Unity Point's parks. Let them see what they're trying to destroy, she said. Let them see that we're not a threat. We're just people trying to live. The message was broadcast continuously as the Council fleet approached. Some ships received it. Some crews watched the recordings. But orders were orders, and Admiral Krelanath had no intention of deviating from his mission. The Battle of Unity Point began at dawn on a Tuesday, though time meant little in space. The Council fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons charging, their shields at maximum. They expected panic, surrender, or a brief, futile resistance. What they got was something entirely different. Hyam Park commanded the Coalition fleet from Unity Point's control center. His forces were arranged in seemingly chaotic patterns, ships from different species mixed together without apparent order. Council tactical officers smiled at the disorganization. Then the battle began. The Coalition ships didn't charge forward. They scattered, moving in unpredictable patterns that confused Council targeting systems. Small fighter craft darted between capital ships, too fast to track. And from the asteroid fields came thousands of mining drones, so small that sensors barely registered them. Admiral Krelanath ordered his fleet to hold formation and fire at will. Energy beams lanced through space, destroying Coalition fighters and damaging ships. But for every ship the Council destroyed, two more seemed to appear. And the mining drones kept coming. Daeho Shin watched his screens, tracking the drones. First wave attaching now. Activating MPIN 3, 2, 1. Across the battlefield, thousands of drones attached to Council ship hulls activated simultaneously. Electromagnetic pulses surged through Velkith energy systems, overloading conduits and disabling weapons. 10 Council ships went dark, their crews scrambling to restore power. The scare warships chose that moment to strike. They were old and slow by Council standards, but their bioarmor was nearly indestructible. They rammed into disabled Council ships, their boarding parties swarming through hull breaches. Scare warriors were terrifying in close combat, and Council crews were trained for ship-to-ship warfare, not hand-to-hand fighting. Yuna Kang's contribution became clear when the Luminae fighters revealed their secret. The energy beings could interface directly with Velkith systems, creating feedback loops that scrambled sensors and communications. Council ships began firing on each other, unable to distinguish friend from foe in the electronic chaos. Human cruisers used tactics that no Council officer had ever seen. They fought in coordinated groups, covering each other's weaknesses, adapting to changing situations in real time. When a Council ship focused on one cruiser, 3 others would strike from different angles. When the Council tried to adapt, the human ships changed their tactics again, but the Coalition was still losing. For every Council ship disabled, the Coalition lost 2. Casualties mounted. Unity Point shields were failing under concentrated fire. Hyan knew they couldn't sustain this much longer. Then Junho Han did something that changed everything. From his hospital ship, he broadcast live footage on all frequencies. Council crews saw injured Coalition soldiers of every species receiving treatment. But they also saw something else. Council soldiers being treated with the same care. 3 Velkith crew members from a damaged ship, rescued by Coalition forces and brought to Han's hospital, were shown receiving emergency surgery. We are not your enemies. Junho's voice accompanied the footage. We are doctors. We treat everyone who needs help. Your council told you we are dangerous, but look, we save your people. We heal your wounded. Is this what monsters do? Some council ships hesitated. Not many, but enough. Their captains questioned their orders. Why were they attacking people who were saving Velkith lives? The hesitation spread through the fleet like a virus. Admiral Krellenleth screamed orders, demanding that all ships continue firing. But doubt had been planted. When his flagship's weapons locked onto Junho's clearly marked hospital ship, 3. The images from the Battle of Unity Point spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Junho Han's footage of Coalition forces treating injured Council soldiers appeared on news feeds throughout Council space. Videos of the battle showed clearly who had attacked and who had defended. Interviews with captured Council crew members revealed the truth. The Coalition had offered medical care to their enemies, had treated prisoners with dignity, had fought only to protect their homes. Public opinion in Council space turned toxic. Protests erupted on a dozen worlds. Citizens demanded answers. Why had the Council attacked refugees? Why had they tried to destroy people who were simply trying to survive? The official explanations about maintaining stability rang hollow when compared to footage of Krill children playing with human children on Unity Point. In the Council chamber, the Archon Prime faced something he had never experienced before. Defiance from his own delegates. The Chur Harmony representative stood from her throne, her feathers bristling with barely controlled anger. This is madness, she declared. We have violated every principle we claim to uphold. We attacked refugees who pose no military threat. We attempted to destroy a peaceful coalition. Our actions are indefensible. The Thorian Collective's delegate remained silent, but their vine body drooped with what might have been shame. Other delegates shifted uncomfortably. Some avoided eye contact. The unity that had voted for exile and war was crumbling. They are a threat, the Archon Prime insisted, but his voice lacked its usual authority. Their very existence challenges Council authority. Good, the Chur delegate said flatly. Perhaps our authority needs to be challenged. I call for a vote of no confidence in the Archon Prime's leadership. The motion passed. For the first time in Council history, an Archon Prime was removed from power. But the damage went deeper than one leader's fall. 3 species formally withdrew from the Council, declaring that they could no longer support an institution that would make war on refugees. Others threatened to follow. On the Velkith homeworld, something even more dramatic was unfolding. Young Velkith citizens, inspired by the Coalition's example and ashamed of their empire's actions, organized mass demonstrations. They demanded democratic reforms, equal rights for non-Velkith species within the empire, and a formal apology to the Coalition. The Imperial Guard refused to fire on the protesters. Some joined them. Within the Velkith government, a faction of reformers gained power. They reached out to the Coalition, proposing dialogue. Minji Kim accepted, though many Coalition members were skeptical. Rakther spoke for many when he said, "We should not trust them. They tried to destroy us." But Minji understood something important. If we respond to their war with hatred, we become what they feared. If we respond with openness, we prove that our way is better. The first formal meeting between Coalition and Council representatives took place on neutral ground, a small moon halfway between their territories. Minji led the Coalition delegation, accompanied by representatives from the Krill, Scare, and Lumine. The Council sent diplomats from 5 species, including a young Velkith reformer named Talith, who had been at the forefront of the protests. The negotiations were difficult. Centuries of Council dominance and recent violence created deep mistrust. But slowly, carefully, both sides found common ground. The Coalition didn't want revenge. They wanted recognition, respect, and the right to exist without interference. The reformist council members wanted to transform their institution, to create something that served all species equally rather than maintaining hierarchies. Talith spoke honestly about Velkith's shame. We were taught that we were superior, that other species existed to serve us. The Coalition showed us how wrong we were. You built in months what the Council has failed to achieve in millennia, true cooperation between equals. We want to learn from you. Soman Lee worked tirelessly to facilitate understanding between the two sides. She organized cultural exchanges, bringing Council citizens to Coalition worlds and Coalition members to Council space. A Velkith scientist spent a month at Yuna Kang's research facility and returned home amazed at the collaborative spirit. A krill artist displayed their work in a Council museum and received critical acclaim. A human chef opened a restaurant on a Thorian world, blending human and alien cuisines. Not everyone welcomed these changes. Conservative factions within the Council space resisted fiercely. They attempted to organize economic boycotts of Coalition goods. They spread propaganda claiming that Coalition equality was merely a facade for human domination. Some extremists launched terrorist attacks against Coalition embassies, but the momentum could not be stopped. More species applied for Coalition membership, attracted by the promise of equal representation and economic opportunity. Within 2 years of the Battle of Unity Point, Coalition membership had grown to 87 species. Trade volumes increased by 600%. Coalition technology, developed through multi-species collaboration, surpassed Council equivalents in efficiency and innovation. Tyan Choi oversaw the construction of 3 new hub stations, each larger than Unity Point, positioned at strategic locations throughout Coalition space. These stations became centers of commerce, research, and cultural exchange. On one station, a human engineer worked with a Luminae researcher and a krill metallurgist to develop a new type of starship hull that was lighter, stronger, and cheaper than anything previously possible. Yuna Kang's science directorate made breakthrough after breakthrough. Multi-species research teams approached problems from angles that single-species teams never could have imagined. A cure for a plague that had ravaged Thorian colonies for decades was discovered by a team that included humans, Luminae, and Thorian researchers. New forms of terraforming technology allowed marginal worlds to become habitable. Faster-than-light travel became safer and more efficient. JUNHO. Han's hospital network expanded to over 200 facilities across Coalition space. Medical knowledge from dozens of species was compiled into comprehensive databases. Diseases that had been incurable for one species were easily treated using techniques from another. Life expectancy increased across the board. Infant mortality dropped to historic lows. The Coalition's success created a crisis for the Council. Traditional member species faced a choice: reform to compete with the Coalition model, or continue losing population and economic power. Some chose reform. Others clung stubbornly to old hierarchies and watched their economies stagnate. The Chur Harmony formally applied for Coalition membership, becoming the first former Council species to make the transition. Their delegate, now called Ambassador Shira, explained the decision in a public broadcast. "We have watched the Coalition build something beautiful from exile and hardship. Meanwhile, the Council clings to power structures that serve only a privileged few. The choice is obvious. We choose equality. We choose cooperation. We choose the future." More followed. Smaller Council species that had always been marginalized saw the Coalition as a chance for genuine representation. Even some traditionally powerful species began to reconsider their positions. The Council that had once ruled the galaxy was fragmenting. 10 years after humanity's exile, Minji Kim stood before a gathering that would have been unimaginable a decade earlier. The Grand Assembly Hall on Unity Point, expanded and rebuilt several times to accommodate growth, now hosted representatives from 137 species. Some were former council members. Some were Outer Rim natives who had lived in obscurity for generations. Some were species newly discovered through coalition exploration. She stood at the podium, older now, her hair showing gray, but her eyes still bright with purpose. "We were exiled because the council feared what we represented," she said. "They feared change. They feared equality. They feared the idea that power should be shared rather than hoarded. They thought exile would destroy us. Instead, it freed us to build something better." The assembly erupted in applause. Representatives from dozens of species rose to their feet. Even those who had initially been skeptical of the coalition, who had joined only for economic advantage, now believed in what had been created. "But our work is not finished," Minji continued. "The council still exists, still maintains its hierarchies, still denies rights to billions of beings. We must continue to prove that our way is better, not through war, not through conquest, but through example. We must show the galaxy that cooperation is stronger than domination, that diversity is strength, that every species has value." Rakther, now serving as Coalition Military Coordinator, spoke next. "The Scare were exiled long before humans. We survived through strength alone, trusting no one, fighting everyone. Humans taught us that there is strength in unity. They taught us that the strongest warrior is one who fights beside trusted allies. Today, Scare warriors serve in mixed species units throughout the Coalition fleet. We are stronger for it. Stone Who Endures represented the cruel perspective. For generations we mined alone, sold our resources for unfair prices, and accepted our lot. The Coalition showed us that our labor has value, that our voices matter, that we deserve respect. Krill industrial output has increased 500% under Coalition cooperation. But more importantly, our people are happy.